Raj. Would you summarize for us what the President intends to do in terms of legislation he will propose to Congress on guns? He raised a lot of issues yesterday. He raised them again today in the second listening session. Is he going to send a bill to Congress authored by him and this administration outlining what he wants, or is he going to leave it to Congress to decide what to propose and what to vote for?
Well, the President is proposing ideas. He's listening right now. He's been talking about a series of ideas. He's talked about strengthening background checks, right, with an emphasis on mental health. He's also talked about raising the age for some gun sales. He's talked about ending bump stocks, the sale of bump stocks. And, you know, there's also state laws that have been on the books and that we're continuing to look at. So right now we're in a listening phase. I wouldn't say that we are or aren't going to propose something that is as specific as legislative language. But he's going to come forward later on with something a little bit more concrete.
For example, on bump stocks or any of these questions, the best way to approach it is to have Congress write the law and for him to sign it. Because he's been pretty specific and consistent on that point. Regulations are helpful, but laws are better. Does he believe Congress should rewrite laws in conjunction with and consistent with the priorities you've just outlined?
Right. Well, I think to each of those points, there could be a different approach. In some areas, state laws make more sense. In other areas, for example, well, I mean, I think some states have had these red flag laws, for example, that remove firearms after you go to a judge for potentially dangerous individuals. That's something that's being done right now in a variety of states, right? They have due process rights for these individuals. It seems to be working in certain areas. That's something that we're looking at, and other places are looking at.
Look at that federally.
Right now, that's not under consideration, but that doesn't mean it can't be. I think what we want to say, though, is that on the issue of bump stocks that you outlined, he's already ordered the Department of Justice to look at
that also.
Sure, but I think that right now he's ordered the Department of Justice to take action, and I think that we're going to see exactly the rule that might be proposed by the ATF and the DOJ on bump stocks. But I don't think that you know, some panacea makes the most sense. I think we need to look at first what policy we want to come forward with, and then what is the right legislative approach, and you know, at a federal and state level. Jonathan.
Hey, Raj, the President's talked about arming teachers who are capable of handling firearms.
Mm-hmm.
There are 3.5 million teachers, roughly, in the United States. He said it would be about 20%. That's 700,000 teachers. How would the President propose arming 700,000 teachers?
Well, I think what the President talked about was taking individuals, personnel within schools. Some could be teachers. You could have other individuals who have training already in how to use firearms or could gain training, and making sure that those individuals have access to concealed weapons that they could have on school grounds. In those instances, the presence of individuals would deter potential attackers.
But by his numbers, we're talking 700,000 teachers or other school personnel, maybe even more, armed in schools. How is that practical? How is that wise to have 700,000 more firearms?
I think when you have a horrific situation like you had last week and some other school shootings that we've seen, these horrible tragedies, what we think and don't think is practical can change. John.
In order for something like that to be effective, you'd have to get buy-in from many, many school boards across this country. And so far, much of the reaction that we've seen to this idea has been negative. Does the President expect that he can get enough buy-in in order to send a signal to potential shooters out there that this is a hardened facility? You walk in the door, as he said a little while ago, you're not going to last very long.
We certainly think so. Look, there are a lot of individuals, leaders in Congress. You know, the NRA has been supportive of this idea. A lot of other folks have been supportive of this idea. The notion that you know, trained individuals who work within schools that have firearms and you know, can serve as a deterrent, we think could keep a lot of schools and a lot of communities safe. Hallie.
Two questions for you on both of these policies to follow up on this conversation. There are some districts, as you know, that don't have enough money to give teachers the school supplies that they need. So how are schools supposed to pay for bonuses for armed teachers, as the President has suggested?
I think we're looking at school safety measures. Again, there's a policy piece to this, and there's a legislative piece to this. I think those are... Yeah, and there's a budgetary piece of this. I think that if we find the policy solutions that make the most sense, that we can get buy-in for, we'll figure out the rest of these other pieces that you outlined. Yeah.
Is on the proposal that he talked about yesterday and today of raising the age limit to purchase,
right.
as he said today, any weapon, you have to be 21 to do it. The NRA has come out as recently as last night and said they oppose that. The president said today he doesn't expect to have to go up against the NRA, but this is clearly an instance where the president holds one position, the NRA holds a different position. Is the president prepared to take on the NRA? What has he said to them? What assurances has he received from them since he said he doesn't expect a battle?
Well, the president did talk to Chris Cox over the weekend. You know, in dealing with school safety issues, we don't expect to agree with the NRA on every single issue. We do think that they are concerned about school safety. As the president tweeted this morning, we think that they're interested in doing what's right. It's going to be part of an ongoing conversation. Their stakeholders, along with you know, family members, students, parents, teachers who the president heard from yesterday, local officials who he talked to today. So he's going to get opinions from a lot of folks, and he's going to come to, you know, the right steps that are necessary.
His mind on that.
I'm not saying he can change his mind. I think that the point here is that he's going to take input from a lot of folks and come forward with proposals that we think can improve school safety. Shannon.
So one solution that the students and family members have called for is a ban on semi-automatic rifles. Is that something that's on the table that the president's considering?
Well, Sarah said the other day that no potential solution is off the table. With that said, when you look at what happened in Florida, you have an individual who dozens of times police either went to his home or were called. There was a call to the FBI. This was a troubled individual. He had been identified. There were a lot of alarms raised about this individual. We don't think that the immediate policy response would be to ban an entire class of firearms. What we're looking for is solutions that don't ban a class of firearms for all individuals, but ban all weapons for certain individuals who are identified as threats to public safety.
The president had said before, he wrote in his book in 2000 that he was for the assault weapons ban. Is there something that's changed his thinking in that time, or can you?
Yeah, I mean, he campaigned for president and was opposed to the assault weapons ban, and his position hasn't changed on that. Jackie.
Raj, I want to ask you about the rule finalized by the Obama administration that President Trump reversed last February, which would have allowed the Social Security Administration to provide information to the gun background check system of people with mental disabilities. CBS News has asked the White House on 15 separate occasions for a participant list of the bill signing, which you guys normally release along with a picture. Is there a reason that you guys aren't releasing this photo? If the president, as he professed today, is proud to work so closely with the NRA, and if not, why not?
Well, I don't know. You hadn't asked me about it, and if you have, I apologize if I haven't gotten back to you, and I don't know if there's a photo, but I will get back to you. On the rule that you're talking about, the Social Security Administration's regulation under the previous administration that blocked gun purchases was opposed by folks on both sides of the aisle, including the ACLU. We need actual solutions that will secure our schools and prevent future shootings. We don't think that taking away Second Amendment rights from people who essentially have trouble with their checkbooks is the right solution.
And then I just want to follow up. You've been saying the president's doing a lot of listening. Did he watch the CNN town hall last night, and why didn't he attend in person and listen in person himself?
I didn't ask him about that. Julie.
Hi. How many White House officials are in danger of losing their security clearances under General Kelly's plan tomorrow?
I can't get into the specifics regarding individual security clearances or numbers or kind of what you're asking me, but I can say, the memo did outline a series of reforms that, in the wake of the situation involving Rob Porter, that we can do to ensure that the security clearance process is tightened up, interim clearances are tightened up. That's actually some of these things the Chief of Staff had taken action on months ago, but these are steps that are going to apply to all White House officials.
You can't give us even numbers, though, when it goes into effect tomorrow?
No, I can't
Why
get
not?
into it.
Why couldn't we at least evaluate, the public evaluate, how meaningful this change has been?
Again, the memo outlines in pretty specific detail how the security clearance process is going to work moving forward and how it's implemented on Friday, and beyond that I can't go further.
Non-nuclear.
Pamela.
You keep saying that you're in the phase of listening to people's ideas, but just specifically, how can you assure the American people that these ideas will turn into concrete action?
Well, I think the president already has them. You saw him for nearly an hour yesterday listen to individuals and take in quite a bit of input from, from people who are frustrated, who are struggling, who are angry. a lot of people. It was very raw, it was very emotional, it was very real. I can tell you it's impacting him. I can tell you that he is listening. And again, the policies that he's beginning to talk about, background checks for one, mental illness and specific measures that we can look at to improve the background check process by looking at mental illness is another. Again, the age 21 piece of this. So there are a number of things that he is considering and talking to family members, talking to local officials, talking to many others. It is impacting some of his thinking.
Sure that action will be taken.
Well, I mean, look, as I said, as I told Major, right now we're in a listening phase. There's a policy process. Eventually there'll be a legislative process.
And is he willing to go against the NRA ultimately, because the NRA is standing firm that it does not support age limits for semi-automatic rifles? Is the president willing to stick with his?
Sure, he's willing to do what's right to ensure we have safe schools. Yeah.
So when the president talks about comprehensive background checks, can you tell me exactly what he means by that? Does he mean that he thinks that every sale of firearms should come with a background check, meaning closing some of these loopholes, like the gun show loophole?
Well, the things that he has talked about are specifically a focus on mental illness, to ensure that in a number of states, I mentioned red flag laws, there are other potential court orders that can be brought into the process, and also ensuring that everybody who engages in a background check has all the information available that we're putting into the system. So more accurate information, more current information from more sources.
But it wouldn't be for all sales, so you...
Again, I wouldn't rule anything out, but right now that's the most immediate thing under consideration. Julie?
On the age limit or the age threshold for purchase of a weapon, is he thinking about an across-the-board threshold for that, or for certain classes of weapons? How specific can you be about
for right now for semi-automatic weapons?
Just for semi-automatic weapons.
Correct.
And then can you talk about what motivated him today to come out against active shooter drills in schools? A lot of districts around the country have been doing these drills to basically prepare students and teachers to survive if there's an incident like that.
I did talk to him about that. I mean, he said that the term active shooter drills is could be frightening for young children. He thinks a drill that's that has a different name and is not the brand of it, frankly, doesn't frighten children might be a better way to approach it. Lily,
do the drills, but just don't call them active shooter drills. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think safety drills, which help in these types of situations, would be more appropriate. The term active shooter drill for a young child could be very frightening. Lily.
Last August, the President had announced his South Asia policy. It's about 6 months now. How does the President see it has moved along, and has it progressed on the lines that he wanted to, or what are the bumps on the road?
So the United States is working closely with our partners in Afghanistan. We've made significant progress against ISIS in reducing their presence and eliminating hundreds of fighters. We've eliminated their top leaders, and we're working relentlessly to target their leadership and bases wherever they emerge. I know that we have restored some clarity in our relationship with Pakistan. For the first time, we're holding Pakistan accountable for its actions. We've seen modest progress in terms of Pakistan's actual acknowledgement of these concerns, but the President is not satisfied with progress when it comes to Pakistan. John.
Thanks a lot, Ron. Are there any proposals or initiatives the President is considering that he could implement by executive order as it relates to the mass shootings that we've seen across our country over the last few years?
Well, he did sign a presidential memorandum earlier this week, specifically on bump stocks, ordering the Attorney General to expedite the ongoing review that's been happening at the Bureau of Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. And then as it relates to reaching out to members of Congress, has the President, since the horrific incident that happened last week, reached out to either the leaders, Republican or Democrat, of the House and the Senate to move some of these proposals forward in the House or the Senate?
Well, he has ongoing conversations with a number of members of Congress on a whole host of issues, and this has been a part of that. He did talk to Senator Cornyn on Friday, specifically about his fixed NICS bill, and this has been part of a lot of ongoing conversations. Again, there is a policy process that is ongoing, and when Congress gets back into session, I think there's going to be more engagement with both Democrats and Republicans on these issues. Right. David?
During that session, the president seemed to suggest he was thinking about pulling ICE out of California because of this sanctuary city flap. Is that a serious proposal?
Well, we think California should actually enforce immigration law rather than get in the way of it and ignore federal immigration law. We think that sanctuary cities are a threat to public safety and they encourage more illegal immigration. So I think the president was raising that concern and making a very valid point.
You think about pulling federal law enforcement out?
Well, I wouldn't get ahead of anything the president might do, but I would say that California's law enforcement decisions and decisions of the governor and others up and down at the state level have been very troubling. Yamiche.
Hi, I have a question about the president's reassurances that he's going to give to Republican lawmakers. The NRA president said today of people that are trying to change gun control that they hate the NRA, they hate the Second Amendment, they hate individual freedom. If there are Republican lawmakers who then come and back the president, if he has a difference with the NRA, what assurances is he going to give them that he's going to support them if the NRA chooses to run a primary challenger against them?
Well, the president is going to propose, more specifics with regard to school safety. He's going to want support from Democrats and Republicans, and yeah, he's going to provide political cover for those who are willing to take leadership roles. I don't necessarily think that everything that he's going to be proposing is going to be at odds with the NRA or any group, but he is going to propose things. He is very serious about this issue, and he does want to have solutions. Francesca.
Thank you, Raj. Following on several of my colleagues' questions about the issue of arming teachers in schools, I understand what you're saying about how this is something that we can get into more of the specifics later, but the president is saying that not just 20%, up to 40% of teachers could have these concealed carry permits in schools. And as John was noting, at that point, that would be more than 700,000. That would be, a million plus at this point. And President Trump said that they would only be going to highly adept teachers, but he used John Kelly or someone like John Kelly as an example today when he talked about it. And so does the president really believe that there are up to 20% or 40% of teachers in schools who are as adept as someone like John Kelly at wielding a weapon?
We've talked to teachers, we've talked to folks in communities. I think there are a lot of people who, if they aren't currently trained, would be willing to get trained. Again, this is a very complex problem, and we need serious solutions. That is a big step. I understand what you guys are saying, but I also think that if we really want school safety, a very serious idea is having trained individuals in schools with concealed weapons, because that will certainly deter potential attackers.
One question on the background checks. The president used the word comprehensive background checks. What does he specifically mean when he says the word comprehensive? Does that mean universal, and would he be willing to support universal background checks? And just to clear that up, what I mean by that is background checks on all firearms sales. Right,
and as I said, nothing is being ruled out at this stage, but the focus is on mental illness. Trey.
Thanks, Raj. One on foreign policy for you, and one on domestic policy.
Sure.
First, on Syria, we saw the statement from this administration last night. Today, more civilians are dying east of Damascus. What more can President Trump do to stop the killing?
Well, we are monitoring the situation, and don't want to get ahead of anything that may or may not be announced on that front. But the Assad regime and Russia's actions on this front are on notice.
Does the president believe Bashar al-Assad is committing war crimes?
I would say that Bashar al-Assad has already committed war crimes. He's already gassed his own people with sarin. He's already committed unthinkable acts, and he's done so with Russian support. And we don't want that to continue.
On guns, quickly, sorry, Raj. On school shootings, generally speaking, does the president see this as a guns issue or a people issue?
I think it's about safety. It's about people, and it is about ensuring that schools, our children, are kept safe. I mean, he talked about that. He talked about that a bit yesterday, and a bit also as well today. You have a situation right now where in a lot of communities, banks, local bank branches, stadiums where people go to watch a sporting event are a lot more secure and a lot safer than schools are, and that doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. anybody who's feeling threatened or can afford it, whether it's a celebrity or politicians, they have armed guards, they have security details, they have people who are able to protect them with firearms, and that's one of the issues that he's raising. Blake.
Raj, thank you. When you look at past school shootings that most Americans can recite at this point, Columbine, the shooters in that case used handguns and a sawed-off shotgun. Sandy Hook, the shooter used a handgun and a type of AR-15. Stoneman Douglas the other day, an AR-15. When the president is talking about teachers being armed with guns in classrooms, is he talking about being armed with handguns? Is he talking about being armed with AR-15s? Is he talking about being armed potentially with shotguns? What exactly is he talking about here?
Well, I haven't asked him about that. I would say concealed weapons, are of a certain variety.
And just to pick back up on Hallie and John and that 700,000 number, if you give these people bonuses, say $1,000, you're talking about $700 million potentially. Maybe it's north of $1 billion, maybe it's less than that. In any event, it's a lot of money. Would the federal government pay for something like this? Do you expect the state and local municipalities to pay for this?
The policy hasn't been fleshed out, but I mean, do we really think that that's too much to pay for school safety? Charlie.
You mentioned that the president spoke with NRA's Chris Cox over the weekend. Did he specifically discuss this idea of raising the legal age to purchase a rifle to 21, or was this subject not discussed?
I'll have to get back to you on that. John.
Real quick second question, if I could. It's all right. It's all right. I only had one. Everybody else did too. Adam Schiff says that he'd like to get his Democratic memo out this week. He's sent it to the FBI for redactions. If it comes back to the White House with the appropriate redactions, will you expedite its release?
I know that the House Intelligence Committee, the minority, has been in touch with the FBI, and they've been going back and forth about that. Yeah, once it meets the FBI's standards for ensuring that law enforcement sensitive and sources and methods are protected, we would support its release.
Yeah, just another subject. Last week, the president's personal lawyer acknowledged giving a $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels. Is the president aware that his lawyer paid that kind of money to a porn star to buy her silence? Does he approve of that?
I haven't asked him about it, but that matter has been asked and answered in the past.
Not since he acknowledged this. Yeah. He acknowledged this last week. This is the first time we've had a chance to ask about it. So can you go back and we find out if the president approves of the fact?
Yeah, I haven't asked him about that.
Will you ask him about that?
I haven't asked him about it.
But will you ask him about it, Rob?
I'll get back to you. Ken.
Police in Israel said last week that they have sufficient evidence to charge Prime Minister Netanyahu with bribery charges. Does the president believe that the Prime Minister is innocent, and does he have any concern that this legal issue could affect the peace process?
Well, that's an internal Israeli matter, and I'm not going to comment on it. Thanks a lot, guys.
Can you take a non-gun question?